Especially an imam, when he enters into the masjid, it is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that he would look around the masjid. And this isn't just for the leadership, this is for every single person. Because the masjid is something that we all love and adore.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please forgive me.
No interruption.
Please forgive me, I don't mean to be rude, but I left my phone right there. Please forgive me. Sorry, please, I didn't mean to interrupt. Jazakallah khair.
So the first lesson is that when a person enters into the masjid, it's from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that he look around and he notice things in the masjid. Not to walk in there as if you're some sort of, big pious person that all you can do is look on the ground and not look anywhere, not raise your eyes. No. The way of the Prophet ﷺ was that he walked into the masjid, he would look around. If he saw something out of place, he would put it back in place. If he saw that there was some filth, some dirt, or even in this case some mucus, then he corrected it. Why? Because the masjid is a sha'ar. It is a sign. It is a representation of the deen. And so for that reason, it is something that Allah Himself calls it Baytullah. When Allah attaches His name to something, then He's honored that thing. He's elevated it. And so for every single believer, the masjid holds a very special place. And anyone who takes care of it is rewarded for taking care of it. You're taking care of the house of Allah, after all. So it should be the habit of every single person that when he comes into the masjid, he looks around, he notices. Yeah, in your own home, maybe you're oblivious. When you go to work, maybe you have no idea what's happening around you. But especially in the masjid, you should be aware, make a point of it, look around, see what it is, what's there that you can correct. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, فِي بُيُوتٍ أَذِنَ اللَّهُ أَن تُرْفَعَ. That in the houses of Allah, Allah has commanded that we raise it, that we make it better, we do good with it. The Prophet ﷺ, in this hadith was narrated by Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu as well. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, عُرِضَتْ عَلَيَّ أُجُورُ أُمَّتِي حَتَّى الْقَذَاتِ يُخْرِجُهَا الرَّجُلُ مِنَ الْمَسْجِدِ. That the rewards of my ummah were shown to me. Imagine. The Prophet ﷺ saw all of our rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Presented that Fulan ibn Fulan, this is what he will get. This person from your ummah, this is what he will get. So the Prophet ﷺ said, I was shown all of it to the point that I even saw the qadat, which is the dirt, the dust that settles in the masjid, that a man removes from the masjid. He cleans it, he sweeps it, he sees a little piece of, maybe some litter that doesn't belong there, he picks it up. Not only is this a thing of reward, but the Prophet ﷺ is shown it as well. Now this idea of honoring the house of Allah, or this idea of looking around and keeping things clean, this isn't something particular to the masjid. Meaning, keeping things clean is not something particular to the masjid. It also applies to our homes. It also applies to other Muslim spaces as well. In fact, we could generalize and say to pretty much every space. That when a Muslim walks in and he sees something out of place, or he sees something of filth, that he takes responsibility and he removes it. And we know for all of those things that Allah has made us mukallaf, He's made us responsible. If you fulfill it, Allah rewards you, and if you leave it, Allah punishes you. So a person is not obligated to clean everything that he sees, but if he does it while thinking to himself that I will do this for the sake of Allah, I will clean the house of Allah for His sake, I will keep my house free of filth as well, for the sake of Allah, then a person will be rewarded for that as well. Here, in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ isn't just cleaning it, but he's telling other people as well. He's giving them a lesson. So this lesson applies to us as well. That if we see something out of place, yes, fix it. But if you have the opportunity, then correct people on it as well. And somebody threw that trash. Somebody threw mucus on the wall. Somebody did this. So if there's people around, then in a nice way, one with hikmah, explain to people that this is not something that should be done. Of course, this needs to be done in a way of wisdom. And it goes both ways. It goes both ways. Meaning the person who gives the advice should learn to give it in a good way, but also the person who receives the advice should be able to receive it in a good way. So sometimes the person giving it may not give it in a good way, but that doesn't excuse the person receiving it from receiving it in a good way. Right? Sometimes the uncle in the masjid corrects you. Right away, you get angry. He's correcting me? He's not my father. Who does he think he is? He's not the imam. He's not the admin. Who is he to speak? He may have given advice however he gave it, but we took it in a bad way. Sometimes we come to the masjid, someone says something, perhaps in a harsh way, perhaps in a way that we didn't like. Immediately what comes to our mouth? I'm never coming back here again. With that masjid, don't ever go to that masjid. You go around, you tell everyone, don't go to this masjid, don't go to that masjid. The people there aren't nice. It's the house of Allah. Who are we to criticize it? And these are the people who are occupying the house of Allah. Who are we to criticize them? Perhaps upon their entrance into the masjid and they're taking care of the masjid, Allah forgives their sins over it. And we hold them to account? Who are we to do that? It goes both ways. That when a person gives advice, he should give it in the way that is best received by the individual. And sometimes it's better not to give advice depending on the personality of the person. Right? The command for us is al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy 'anil munkar. That we are commanded to encourage the good and prevent or prohibit the evil. So this is a command, this is something wajib upon us to do. But the one caveat to that that the ulama tell us is that we do it in a way that isn't going to make things worse. So even if giving advice in a good way is going to make something worse, then sometimes it's better just to leave it. We know people, sometimes there's a person, he just can't take advice well. And say, fine, I'll just leave it for this, or I'll wait till another moment, or perhaps I'll find someone that person can take advice from, and I'll have that person develop the message, deliver the message instead. Or once in a while, what the Prophet ﷺ would do is he would give advice to the people in a general way without mentioning individuals. So one person does something wrong, the Prophet ﷺ saw them doing it wrong, and then instead of saying, oh you, he says, there are some people that do such and such. And he explains it that way, so no single person is pointed out. However you do it in a way of his wisdom, do it in a way of hikmah. Now coming back to the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, he saw some mucus on the wall facing the Qibla. Is mucus, for the people, I guess everyone should really know this, is mucus tahir or najis? Is it pure or impure? It's tahir. It's something that's pure. If you have it on you, it's not going to break your salah. It's not something that you have to remove, but it's something disliked by people. It's tahir, but it's disliked by people. So it's not that a person should tell themselves, oh, this is tahir, let me blow my nose wherever I feel like. Let me blow it on my neighbor. And he gets angry, you're like, oh, it's tahir, what's the problem? It's not like I urinated on you, this is mucus. No, there are some things that are pure, but they are disliked by people, and we have to respect people on that as well. Or, as the Prophet ﷺ was indicating, this mucus is pure, that's why he's cleaning it off with his hands. But it's something disliked by people, and that's why he's removing it. How do we deal with this today? Well, let's look at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. At that time, when people would clear their throat or clear their nose, they would do what the Prophet ﷺ is telling us to do, is to turn to the left and spit onto the ground. And then to bury it. Other hadith mentioned to bury it into the dirt. Before, the floors of masajid used to be this way. They were made of rocks and dirt. They weren't like we have today. So you could spit on the ground and you could bury it. What you would do is in the salah, if it happened, you'd go to the left, you'd spit, and then you would spit under your foot, and then put your foot over it. At the end, you would bury it, so that the next person who came didn't sit on it, or have to touch it, or even see it for that matter. Now, a literal reading of this hadith, and I've seen people do this, that they're standing in the salah on the carpet and they go, this is why not everything is read literally. The hadith is not meant to be taken in a literal way that you should spit onto the masjid floor, but rather it means that those things that come from our body that are tahir but disliked by people, remove them in such a way that they don't cause difficulty to other people. So when the ground was made of dirt, you spit on the dirt, you put your foot on it, it didn't bother anyone. When you were done, you buried it and you covered it up, it didn't bother anyone. But you do it now there's nowhere to put it. It's going to be there until the next person comes and does sajda. The same thing happens with coughing and sneezing and other things. These are natural things. They're difficult to control, but people dislike them, and so we control them to the best of our ability. The same thing in the salah. You might have to clear your throat, and you cough a little bit, and then there's some people who will do it very loudly. They're bringing it seems like they're bringing it from their stomach all the way up. This is disliked by people, and you shouldn't do it. The same goes for other smells, for example. That the Prophet ﷺ forbade some people from eating onions and coming to the masjid because of the smell that will come from their mouth. And so we have to have some idea of how we smell. You played a hard game of basketball, you had a lot of fun, now let me go pray in the masjid. Both of those are good. But you come into the masjid and you smell like sweat, and you cause discomfort to the person next to you. And now throughout his salah, he's trying to concentrate, he's trying to whisper and speak with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but instead he's overcome by your odor. The same thing for those people who smoke. Nowadays, although it's impermissible, the people that smoke marijuana, oftentimes people who smoke weed, again, it's impermissible, but the people that do it stink of it, they reek of it, but they have no idea that they do. Or at least I think that they don't, because I don't imagine people would walk out of the house like that. And so what the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us is that there are things that discomfort people, although they may be allowed, that we have to be cautious of them. So nowadays, since we can't bury them anymore, what do? We can do what the Prophet ﷺ is showing us. That you spit into a part of your clothing, and then you rub it together until it disappears. This is one option. And again, it's rubbing it till it disappears. Before, they used to generally wear clothing that was white in color. And white, you can do that. You can spit on it, you can get mucus on it, wipe it, and you won't be able to notice it. But if you're wearing black like this, and you put mucus on it and you wipe it, it's just going to spread even more. And it becomes obvious to the person next to you. He doesn't want to stand next to you now when he sees the big stain on your clothing. So all of these things should be kept in mind. Next, فَحَكَّهَا بِيَدِهِ. The Prophet ﷺ came and he started removing it. It shows the humility of the Prophet ﷺ. This is Habibullah. This is أفضل المخلوق. This is the greatest of creation. He could have told any companion, go remove that, and they would have all jumped to do it on his behalf. But instead we found that the Prophet ﷺ himself is doing khidmah of this masjid and cleaning it. So it indicates towards his humility, it indicates that he was a person who was the first to tell people to do good and to prevent them from evil. He was the first to do that. And he was the first in honoring the masjid as well. And so he set an example here. Not just telling people to do it, but he himself would do it. It's also another lesson in this, is that if a thought crosses your mind that maybe I won't pick up something because I'll feel good about it. Riyah, ostentation. That if I go and I start cleaning the masjid, then people will look at me and they'll think, oh, what a pious, mashallah, what a great Muslim this person is. And then for that reason you don't do the good act. This is not the example that the Prophet ﷺ is setting. That when there is a good action to be done, don't fear people into not doing it. Don't fear people into leaving a good action. But rather the good action should be done, and then you can work on your heart and your nafs at another time. But don't leave that. Another lesson is to seek good deeds, little deeds. Sometimes things that we just overlook. We don't think much of it. There's a wrapper on the masjid floor and we just walk by and whatever. But that is a reward that you just left on the ground. If there was $100 bill on the ground, you wouldn't just walk by and you'd pick it up. But here is a reward that will benefit you eternally. It's way more than $100. And we walk right by. We don't take advantage of it. There's many opportunities like this in the masjid, outside of the masjid, where you could help and assist other believers. After that, he mentions وَرُؤْيَ مِنْهُ كَرَاهِيَةً, that we could see the dislike on his face coming from the Prophet ﷺ as he's doing it. This is a very important point that gets lost on a lot of people. It is from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to show dislike when seeing something that is disobedience of Allah or something that is dishonoring Islam. Oftentimes people think the Prophet ﷺ was completely merciful. He never got angry, he never showed dislike, he never raised his voice. These are all incorrect. The Prophet ﷺ did raise his voice at appropriate times. He did get angry and show it at appropriate times. And he did call out people at appropriate times. He wasn't somebody that just overlooked everything no matter what people did. There is a time and there is an appropriate place to show your dislike, especially when it comes to Islam, people that are dishonoring the masjid in this case, or people that dishonor any aspect of the deen that is meant to be honored. Or when somebody is openly disobeying Allah. We're not to laugh and smile at that person. We're to show our displeasure at that. Somebody is standing there and he's mocking the deen, he's mocking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we tell ourselves, oh, the Prophet would have been quiet and he would have smiled at them. No, he wouldn't. No, he wouldn't. The Prophet ﷺ himself never took revenge for himself. But that doesn't mean the companions weren't ready to do it. You understand the difference? If somebody harms you, then it's up to you whether you want to take revenge or not for that. And the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ was not to. But if somebody harms another Muslim, it's not up to you to decide, oh, I'm going to let him keep harming the Muslim. No. If somebody disparages the Prophet ﷺ, it's not up to you to decide to let that go. It was the Prophet's right ﷺ to let that go on his behalf. It's not our right to let that go. Because there is no greater sign, there is no greater sha'ar of this deen than Rasulullah ﷺ. And that goes for all of the other signs as well. But, an important point. Ignoring harm or ignoring disrespect and disobedience is not being merciful. If someone says he sees somebody doing wrong and he tells himself, I'm just going to smile at him and show him mercy because this is what Rasulullah ﷺ would have done, that is not mercy. Why isn't that mercy? Is it merciful to let a person continue to harm himself? Is that mercy? A person is walking through traffic and you tell yourself, I'm merciful, I'm not going to stop. Are you really merciful? A person is ruining his akhirah in front of you and you tell yourself, out of mercy, I'll let him keep doing it. That's not mercy. Mercy is to stop that person. So when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam rahmatul lil alameen showed his dislike at other believers, he was being merciful in that situation. That is showing mercy. So these nuances are important to understand because oftentimes if we just work off of stereotypes without understanding the reason behind it, then we might actually cause more harm to ourselves and to other people. So the Prophet ﷺ, he showed dislike. And this is from the hadith as well. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, مَنْ رَعَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ. That whoever of you sees something wrong, then he should change it with his hand. فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. And if he's not able to do it with his hands, then with his tongue, فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ. And if he's not able to do it with his tongue, then at least he should do it with his heart, meaning he should show dislike for it. If he can't say it, at least show it. وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. The Prophet ﷺ said that's the weakest sign of Iman. So showing dislike at a disobedience of Allah, this is part of Iman. And when a person has no dislike in his heart, nothing that shows up on his face, while people are disobeying Allah, harming the deen, mocking it, mocking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then we truly fear that that person's Iman is gone. Even his heart can't muster the strength to dislike it. And then continuing, he said, إِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ إِذَا قَامَ فِي صَلَاتِهِ. So when one of you stands for his prayer, فَإِنَّمَا يُنَاجِي رَبَّهُ. Then he is indeed conversing with his Rabb. And as I mentioned earlier, conversing here means that there are two individuals involved in this speech. When a person is praying in his prayer, then he is having a quiet conversation with the Rabbul Alameen. Now a person might say, Allah's not saying anything. This is a one-way conversation. I'm the one who's speaking. I'm the one who's reciting. But this is a misunderstanding. The Salah has two aspects to it. There is an aspect that is for the abd, and then there is an aspect that is for the ma'bud, for the one being worshipped. The aspect that belongs to this worshipper is his dua, is his tasbih, is his praise of Allah that gets done in the prayer. And the aspect that belongs to Allah is the kalamullah that gets mentioned in the prayer. The Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the belief of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that the Quran itself is kalamullah, it's an attribute of Allah. Like Allah, it had no beginning, it's not created, it is something eternal. But the words that we recite, that is something created. It comes out of our mouth. So as we're in the prayer and we're reciting, the action, the word, physically is something Allah creates for us. It comes from us. It itself is a creation. But the actual Quran itself that is there, that is Allah's. So in the prayer, when a person is reciting Quran, although the words are his, but the actual Quran itself is from Allah. And so there is a conversation taking place here. There is a munajat taking place here. There is this back and forth that takes place where the Rabb is speaking with his servant. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, oh, perhaps the Prophet said, رَبَّهُ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ قِبْلَتِهِ. That his Rabb is between him and the Qibla. There are some people that are literalists. They are literalists, meaning they want to take everything literally. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He is on the arsh, they will say He's physically on the arsh. That is where He is. But here the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that your Rabb, His Rabb, is between Him and the Qibla. Nobody takes this to be literal. Because otherwise it would mean that the Rabb is there, physically, in the masjid, between the worshipper and the Qibla. And not just in that masjid, but every masjid across the world. Now He's in parts. Now He's in places. Now He's like human beings and dependent upon the location. All of this is impossible for Allah. So every single person, when they read this hadith, they understand that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Allah is between the worshipper and the Qibla, it means that the Rabb is not literally there, but He's metaphorically there. In the same way, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي فِي السَّمَاءِ إِلَهٌ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَهٌ. That He is a God in the heaven and He is a God in the earth. No one literally believes that there is a God in the heaven and there is a God in the earth. Or that He occupies a space in the skies and occupies a space on the planet. These are all impossibilities for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, these are words used metaphorically to indicate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us, He's aware of us, He has knowledge of us, and everything that we're doing. And really beautiful thing here, and this kind of gets into the tazkiyah spiritual aspect of it, is that look at what's taking place in the Salah. What's taking place is you have this worshipper, you have this human being. He's originated. There was a time that he didn't exist. And there will be a time that he dies. He has parts to him. He has fingers and hands and toes. He's made of pieces. He is dependent. He needs water. He needs drink. He needs clothing. He needs to take care of himself. He needs to wash himself. He needs all of these things to survive. He needs air. He needs people. I mean, the list is endless. This human being who was originated, who is weak, who is completely dependent, he is the one worshipping. And who is he worshipping? The one being worshipped is eternal. He's always been there, he will always be there. In fact, time doesn't even apply to him. He doesn't have any parts. He's a singularity, he's just one. Completely independent. He doesn't need the worshipper, he doesn't need anything else either. What relationship do these two even have? You know, sometimes one human being meets another human being. And people from afar look at those two and say, these guys don't even belong in the same picture. You know, so once in a while some guy wants to marry a girl and they're like, dude, she's not even in your planet. Right? She's not even on your universe. This is sometimes a relationship between people. But the relationship between us and Rabbul Alameen is infinitely beyond that. The fact is that we should have no relationship. We should have nothing in this particular situation. We have been ordered to obey, and subhanAllah, even the obedience is created. All of our actions is created by Allah. If it wasn't for Allah, it would never come to fruition. The tawfiq that we get, the inspiration, the capability to act, that too is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He made us, He gave us everything, He made the creation, He made the worship, He gave us the tawfiq for the worship, all of it. And then out of His infinite mercy, what does He do? He says, this is my abd. This is my slave. The action that the slave did, he did it for me. We have no right to that. Logically, we have no right to it. We shouldn't have any right to it. But yet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His infinite mercy, He takes something that has no value in and of itself, except what Allah gives us. We have no value inherently, and gives us tremendous value by associating us with Him. Right? We become Abdullah. We become Ibadullah. And then we have value. This building at one point was an office space. It had no value to it. It was a place that was made to earn money. And then it became Baytullah. And now its value skyrocketed. It is a place that people, it's their home. They come here daily, multiple times a day. Their children come here. Their elderly come here. They take care of it. If anything were to happen to it, they would be more upset than if it happened to their own homes. When something gets attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or more correctly, when Allah attaches something to Himself, then that thing gains value. And so this is the situation of a person in prayer. A person who himself is nothing, absolutely nothing, is honored to the highest levels. His deeds are being presented before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what Allah has done for us. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that he is conversing with his Rabb, and that his Rabb is between him and the Qibla. So when that is the situation in your prayer, then don't spit in the direction of the Qibla. Instead, spit to the right, left, and below your foot. Or then the Prophet ﷺ took the edges of his cloth, his thawb, or whatever he was wearing at the time, and he spit into it instead. And again, just to emphasize the fiqhi point here, is that the mucus itself is tahir. You can have it on your clothes, it doesn't affect. But it is disliked to do that because of the dislike it causes other people. And this is something that can't be known logically. It's something that is revealed to us through wahy. A person might say, oh, it's coming out of my nose. It should be like vomit. Vomit is najis. So then mucus should be najis. Or urine comes out of my body, that's najis. Blood comes out of my body, that's najis. So this should be as well. But it's not. And the reason is only because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed it to us. This is how we know. One final point that I'll make is that the Prophet ﷺ, in the options that he gave, what he didn't say was swallow it. Right? Most of us, if we cough and something comes up and we're in the prayer, or it comes, we snort and bring it down, most of us are just going to swallow it. In the prayer, what else are you going to do? The Prophet ﷺ didn't give that as an option. It doesn't mean it's impermissible, it's still permissible. It doesn't even mean it's makruh. It's still permissible to do that. But here the Prophet ﷺ is indicating to us that taking out the mucus is better. Allahu Alam, there might be some health benefits to it that was shown to the Prophet ﷺ. Or perhaps this is just the better thing to do because it is the sunnah of the Prophet to have done that. Practically, what can we do in our prayer? So what I would see my teachers doing is that they would always have a handkerchief with them, or a napkin, tissue, something like that on them, especially when they were sick. And so when they were sick, they would have it someplace, usually in the front pocket here, or in a side pocket that's easy to get to. And in the prayer, if you reach in, grab it, and bring it up in a motion that's minimal, meaning don't go looking around, finding it, or reaching in, oh wait, this is my phone. Do a simple thing, know where it is, pull it out, wipe your nose, cough into it, spit into it, and then pull it back. As I mentioned earlier, it's not really possible to spit on the floor here, nor should you. And spitting it onto your clothing is an option, but it's something that's disliked nowadays. I don't even know. You can imagine that if you were in the prayer and you spit into your cloth and went like this, what the person next to you would be thinking. He might have been foot to foot. After that, he's not going to be foot to foot. So for us, find the way that's minimal. If you can do it, if you can't, swallow it. It's permissible. Although the hadith indicates that it's better to do otherwise. One last point, is that in this hadith we also get a hierarchy. What is that hierarchy? The Prophet ﷺ said to spit to the left. So it means that the right is better than the left. And he said to spit under the foot. And so it indicates that the top part of the body, the hands, are better than the bottom part of the body. And so the Prophet is indicating that if you're going to spit anywhere, the lowest point is going to be the left, towards the floor, towards your foot. And then as you move away from that, it indicates towards a greater respect, or I guess a kind of a daraja hierarchy, by which we can sort of evaluate the human being, or ourselves. Alright, shall we stop there? Any questions? Go ahead.
If you're under the weather, you're gonna sneeze a lot during prayer, right? Can you hold on to a tissue or something throughout the prayer?
Yeah, so the question is that if you're not feeling well and your nose is running, can you hold on to a tissue in your hand? You can. And this is probably the best thing to do. If you know you're going to have to wipe your nose, rather than looking for the tissue when the time comes, you just have it folded up in your hand, the left hand, bring it up, wipe, put it back down again. What else? Alright, so inshallah next week we won't have halaqah. Mufti Niyaz is out of town, I'll be out of town as well. But then following week, inshallah, we will continue. Mufti Niyaz will return for that. And jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.